Auburn's regular season for basketball has come to a close. They end it at 24-7. But we got to have a conversation. Do we think that this could be the best basketball team that Auburn has had under Bruce Pearl? That's what we're going to talk about on today's episode of the Auburn Daily Podcast. Joined as always, writer for AuburnDaily.com. We have Andrew Stefaniak. And we're going to talk about how this team stacks up with other teams that Bruce Pearl has had. And if there is any argument to say that could this team be considered the best, we'll do a little bit of a deep dive looking at some of the good teams that Bruce Pearl's had in recent years and see just how this team stacks up with them. Andrew, we're going to do things a little different this episode. We're going to do like an early ad read because you know what? If you're watching this on YouTube, you're like, something's not right with these two. You know what it is? It was daylight savings time. You know what it really is? We have not had our Plains coffee. Am I right?
Oh, yeah. Need it. Didn't have it. Grumpy.
Yeah. We are feeling grumpy. We're looking frumpy. And that's because we have not had our Plains coffee today. If you do not want to look and feel like we do, the key, the elixir of feeling great is that Plains coffee right there. Go to plainscoffee.com. Use that promo code Auburn for 10% off. It will bring you up tons of awesome coffee flavors. And you know what? They got teas as well. If coffee's not your thing, the teas will absolutely bring you to life just like that coffee does. Don't live like Andrew and I are living and drink your Plains coffee. You'll be feeling absolutely great. So let's just jump right into this. Andrew, how did you feel about this team? What did you remember what your preseason, regular season prediction was?
Not this. I don't think. I think everything in the non-conference went pretty chalk for me. I thought they'd lose 2 games. There was 2 games, right? They lost to Appy State and to Baylor.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't think they'd lose to Appy State, but I thought they would lose 2 games. So yeah. I think the non-conference went pretty chalk for me. In the SEC, they finished 13-5. I thought 12-6, 11-7 was kind of the range. And we'll talk about it. I think the difference has been players like Chad Baker-Mazara. I was a really big Chad Baker-Mazara guy, but not what he's done. You know what I mean? I think that's been huge. I think that what you're getting out of Broome, you're getting out of Jalen Williams. We knew that, but they've been as or better than advertised. So I just think that for what my thoughts heading into the season were, this team has by far, I think, overproduced my expectations.
Yeah, so everybody, excuse me, allergy season, another reason I need my Plains coffee. Another thing that I would encourage anybody who's not in the Auburn Twitterverse, Josh Dubb, he does a preseason prediction tweet every year right for the first game. Hey, guys, throw in your win totals of the year. Hundreds of replies on that typically. Lots of people just saying, hey, what are they going to do in the regular season? I will say a lot of people hit the mark on this, or a lot of 23, 24. I predicted 25, so maybe App State falls a little different for you. I'd have been right on the money there. So I think a lot of people had some pretty realistic expectations of this team, just given the schedule, what they saw returning, kind of what was hopeful here. And one thing that I want to think makes a huge difference on this team as we kind of take a little bit of a look back compared to other teams is this generally. I know it's been said a lot. I think this is, I'm going to say it. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think this is Bruce Pearl's deepest team that he's had at Auburn. Agree or disagree?
I agree. I feel like I'm going to play the bad guy today. We do that sometimes. And now I agree with you on that, but I'm also not a big, and people are going to disagree, and that's fine. I'm not a huge depth guy always. I'm a play your guys guy more. You know what I mean? Like Broome is playing 4 minutes a game. Now, his stamina is a question. I don't know those. I don't know enough about Broome as a, does he have the stamina to be out there for 35 minutes? But I'd have him out there 35 minutes. I know that Cardwell's been playing good basketball. And yes, you have some great depth. But once again, it's like, I think there's some points, those guys, your Chaney, who's been playing a lot better. Now, I think these guys are playing better of late, which kind of hurts my argument a little bit. But there's some games where, you know, Bruce does his line change and they take out, you know, the guys, and then the backup 5 guys kind of just can't really get anything going offensively. You know, KD turns the ball over, whatever happens, and it's kind of like, oh goodness, can we please get Broom and Jalen Williams back in the game? And so I do think it's his deepest team. I mean, compared to the Jabari Smith, Walker Kessler team, and then the Final Four team, I think this team's deeper. But I think in the SEC and the NCAA tournament, it's like I'd play Broom 33 minutes. You know, I mean, I don't, and maybe that's just me. I want to hear your thoughts on that, Alex. But it's like I just don't. You know what I mean? You see what I'm saying? Like I play your best players. I think that, yes, you have to get your guys in there to give them a break. I'm not saying play Jalen Williams and Chad Baker-Mazara and Janai Broom for 40 minutes, because you can't do that. But I'd play them an extra 5-6 minutes than you are.
Here's the way I want to look at this. Okay, you take the 5 backups.
Yeah.
So, and I know that some of those have been somewhat fluid this season because I know it's changed some, but just generally speaking, it's typically been Trey, it's been KD, it's been CBM, and Chris Moore have kind of floated around there. So for a while it was CBM. So if you want to put CBM on there, that would really make this quite something.
Yeah.
But for conversation's sake, insert him or Chris Moore, depending on what's part of the season you want to look at. Chaney and then Cardwell. I think if you got those 5 and you put them up against the backups of Bruce Pearl teams of the past in their prime, I would be hard pressed to just think that maybe this backup group would not be running shop. Because here's the thing about it. For the last few years, Dylan has been the backup center, and this is the best version of Dylan we've seen.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, well, automatically, just by there, if you go back 2 prior seasons, you've got a better version of Dylan. You've got, I think Chaney is going to be the better back. I'm trying to think who was the backup for the 21-22 season.
Wouldn't have been Jalen. When did Jalen start? No, he started. So on that roster, you had Jabari and Kessler started. No, it was Jalen.
Yeah, it would have been Jalen. Yes, it would have been Jalen because he'd been behind Jabari. So that was really stupid. I'm over here thinking Jabari's the 3. I'm like, oh, the 3 and God, they just blend together so quickly. So yeah. But let's be honest here. This is a better version of Jalen. But I guess Jalen will be starting now. So then I guess you got to go back to the debate of, okay, a 2-year Jalen 2 years ago, how would he pair up against Chaney now? So that'd be kind of a fun exercise.
Yeah.
Here. So Jalen averaged about 14 minutes, 5.6 points. Hold on, we got to pull the second tab up here. This is going to get some people debating a lot in their head.
I feel like that's got to be what Chaney's numbers are, like right around 6-7 points, 5-6-7 points.
Chaney is about 15.5 minutes, 4.6, where I said Jalen was at
5.6.
5.6 rebounds, 2.7, and then
and how many minutes is Chaney playing?
3.6. Yes, they're about a minute difference. 3.6 rebounds. Shooting. Ooh, the shooting percentage. This will be a good one here. Chaney's shooting percentage is let's see here. 50, 72, and 25. Jalen was 47, 82, and then 29. So minus the free throws, not too far off there. So yeah, I mean, you could maybe give a slight edge to a younger Jalen there, but I think it's a lot closer than maybe people will think in their head due to recency bias.
Yeah.
So because the problem is, I think a lot of people thought Jalen had he left a lot on the table that year when he came in, because it's feel like, he was just feeding the other guys when he was there. And that was even kind of the deal last year. It was like, come on, and he finally stepped up this year to like, all right, this is the Jalen that we thought we could have seen for all these years. And I think, but also I think you can make a fair deal for Chaney, assuming he's here next year and everything plays the same way. And Bruce talked about how athletic he is.
Yeah.
Just saying, there is some talks of debate. Now, another thing I want to bring up here to get a little pivot is, so Justin Hokanson wrote a story on this for Auburn Live. And he clipped a tweet on it. You can find that in my profile, find it on his. But he basically had a chart of advanced stats for 18, 19, 20, 22, and 24 season, the 5 best teams over Bruce Pearl. Basically just went through the whole thing of adjusted offense, defense, efficiency in shooting, 3-point, offense, defense, field goal, 2, 3, offense. I'm talking way faster. I'm thinking way faster. I'm talking 2-point offense, defense, assist, and block. And it basically had the numbers of all those teams, and it's interesting. So if you look at all of those categories, this team actually has the most that they're highest in with adjusted defensive ranking. They're the highest. The adjusted field goal percentage defense, they're the highest. 3-point defense, the highest. 2-point percentage offense, highest. And assist rate, the highest. So that's out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 categories. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're the half. No other teams out of 18, 19, 20, 22 have that. So, fun fact here. You can go look at the tweet out, but 18 has none. 18 was good at everything, great at nothing. Obviously, the 19 team was going to be pretty killer on that adjusted offense at number 5. Now, granted, this team this year was 13. 22 was 30th, 2020 is 37th, 39th in 2018. So you see there's a pretty big jump there between 3rd, 4th, and 5th versus 1st and 2nd. This team has the highest defense at 8. Last year had 10, and then you had pretty big drop-offs prior to that. And then the offense percentage is all roughly the same, around the mid-50s mark. 2019 barely hedged it as 0.4, where this one was 54.0. So what I'm trying to get at here is, if you look at the advanced stats, and this team has been very statistically good team, that's one thing I don't think a lot of people really kind of get here. It's like, okay, this has been a very efficient team, where we see these other teams that kind of had some eye tests. But we've got to remember too, this team has beaten every opponent by double digits. I mean, we say that, but I don't know if we're really comprehending just how crazy that is. So I want to move over here to the far side column here. The best wins versus the worst losses. So I'm going to go ahead and let you say it. The worst finish the sentence. The worst loss of the season was?
I mean, Appy State or Florida? You think Florida? Where'd you want me to go with that?
I mean, it's App State for sure.
Okay, I thought you meant the ugliest. I'll tell you this: App State is a good basketball team. Like now, yes, it's the worst loss of the season, but that is not. You know, I'm trying to think of ugly SEC. Kentucky losing to UNC Wilmington at home. Like I'm trying to think of other ugly SEC losses. Like you ever go into a game? I talk about this on here all the time, and you kind of like, we're gonna lose this game. You know what I mean? Like you just got that feeling. They were on a winning streak, and the fans were hyped, and I just saw that game tipped, and I said, we're gonna lose this game. I could just tell, and it's like, it's a bad loss.
So I will say this: Auburn, the other teams, the SEC, Tennessee and Alabama included. I just want to verify this. Kentucky included. Kentucky's a quad 3 loss, which you just mentioned. They got a few quad 2 losses. Alabama, Florida, Tennessee. These teams all have Kentucky. Like I said, they all have quad 2 losses.
Yeah,
or worse. Auburn has only quad 1 losses. They don't have a single quad 2, 3, or 4 loss. Something worth note here. App State is definitely the worst, on paper. Your next is going to be, as far as net goes, is going to be Mississippi State. But I think you're right. I mean, the Florida one was just ugly.
Yeah.
I will still say the Kentucky one. I mean, it was a good Kentucky team. A Kentucky team that's heating up at the right time was very ugly. But aside from that, I mean, and they really should have an almost beat Baylor. That one game, I don't want to get into that. And then it was a new team, learning to play the other neutral site in South Dakota. We can turn the page on that one. But really, I think you look at the 3 there. You look at App State. You're going to look at Florida. as far as just being your ugliest. And then I just didn't like. I mean, they shouldn't have lost Mississippi. I mean, I felt like they were just running with wet shoes against Mississippi State. But I mean, Kentucky was just, they didn't show up against Kentucky at all.
Yeah.
That happens though. You play 31 games, you're going to have 2 or 3 where you play way under. You're going to play 2 or 3 where you play way over. So let's jump the inverse of this. What was the best win of this season?
I think the Alabama and win at home was great. I think that just slapping South Carolina across the face was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's got to be one of those two. And for me, unless you want to go out of the non-conference, but I don't see anything.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can go non-con. I don't know. I mean, Auburn did not play a really tough non-con schedule this season, which is kind of refreshing compared to other years. So it wasn't. I mean, you could still say beating up on Indiana like they did, beating them by 32 was crazy.
Yeah,
you beat the brakes off Virginia Tech. I mean, USC is not very good. They still beat. I mean,
but they were supposed to be, and that
right.
didn't go Auburn's way either. Indiana and USC were supposed to. They should have been quad 1 games.
Yeah,
you ended up being.
Yeah, you beat Virginia Tech's a 56 in net. Not horrible. Granted, it was at Auburn. Virginia Tech's best win was against Iowa State. Iowa State is ranked 9 in the net right now. So you get a little transitive property there, make yourself feel better. But yeah, Virginia Tech has been a little bit of a spicier team. I think a lot of people kind of wrote that one off. Not a fantastic, you don't hang a banner for that one, but it's still one like, okay, you still beat them by significant double digits, as they've done with everybody. But I agree. I mean, on paper, Alabama is going to be your best win. For whatever reason, outside of defense, just the stat people love Alabama. And had Bruce not taken his foot off the gas, you'd have beaten by 20 plus.
Yeah.
And scored over 100 on their head. So Alabama is definitely trending downward right now.
Yeah, they're not playing well.
Yeah, they're and I will say this, the windmill dunk by Jalen Williams, I think, broke that team. And honestly, if you get windmill dunked like that and then proceed to lose by almost 20, get 100 scored on your head, that's screaming need to go to Rage Room, am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Nate, I know you're a big fan of the show. If you're out there listening, you take you and your boys, you need to play some highlights of that Auburn game. Take them to the Rage Room. I know you probably will not be in the Auburn-Opelika area too soon. So Opelika Rage Room may not be the move for you, but you know what? A lot closer to Tuscaloosa is the Birmingham Rage Room, their second location. Go ahead and check them out. Just go to Birmingham Rage Room or OpelikaRageRoom.com, whichever is closer. Book your session. We said, especially if you are an Alabama player, coach, or fan. Remember that game. It is absolutely good. We mentioned some of these bad loss games. So if you're an Auburn fan, you need to think about some of those games. You go back and look at that Kentucky, that Florida game, or just watch Dalton Connect. Put 80 on Auburn. That one still hurts. That's what I'm going to Rage Room for. You got what's making you? Which loss are you like? Hey, that's my Rage Room loss.
Oh man, I think it's that. I'm not trying to steal yours, but that watching Connect just nail 40 footers when Auburn's was playing the better basketball game. That one got me. I'm gonna go with you on say Tennessee.
Yeah. I was Tennessee. But I'm specifically saying him because Auburn, even if he just has an average game, Auburn just beats the brakes off Tennessee all the same. And you're right. I mean, he's making like contested logo threes.
Yeah,
just
hand in the face, 40 footers.
Yeah, running, popping them up.
They don't even touch the rim. I mean, they're the net. It's just straight through. Boom.
Yeah, no, that was crazy. And it's funny because like that's kind of what has me worried about Tennessee in the postseason. I won't talk about a lot this episode because it's so much about, but if he's cold, I don't know what this Tennessee team does.
Well, they're better. I'll tell you this: they lost to Kentucky because he played so. I'm telling you, the reason that Auburn lost is because he heated up at the end of the game. I think because when he is playing well the whole game and he is their whole offense, the rest of their team can't ever settle in, and that's why against what happens in Kentucky, he scores 40, they score 80 as a team, and nobody else gets dialed in, and they lose. That's my theory on Tennessee.
Right. So I want to kind of compare the wins and losses of some of these other teams that have been top teams under Bruce Pearl Auburn. So you're going to circle the 21-22 team. That was Jabari and Walker. Low-key 19-20 team was lit. Their regular season was 20. So let me just rewind this here. 24-7 for this season. 21-22 was 27-4. That was the Jabari Walker year. 1920, that was Isaac Okoro. That was the season that we lost because of COVID. The postseason we lost. 26-6, so sneaky good team. The 18-19, the Final Four team, they were 22-9. So actually, the team and the team that had the best finish really had the worst start.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of look just all in all there, that team just got incredibly hot and found chemistry at the right time. But you kind of look at the totality of everything that they did, and you think, like, really, how good was this team? They lose at NC State. They get the brakes beat off of them at Ole Miss. And that was a great Ole Miss team.
Yeah.
Played a close one with Kentucky. And then they play Kentucky again and just get boat raced by them.
I was
at South Carolina, Mississippi State. Yeah, I mean, they were kind of really, they only had they had a 3-game winning streak there, January, February, and they started kind of slipping off. And then just right at that Georgia game, they barely beat Georgia, have a close game against Mississippi State, beat Alabama at Alabama, and then that Tennessee game, which it was still close, but it was a really good Tennessee team, so you take it. Sorry, the first time they played Tennessee, excuse me. And then after that, they started to really separate once they got into the month of March. So I really say it was that first Tennessee game they played, oh, we can do this. And then you started seeing it. And then they played Tennessee that second time. And it was just like, oh, okay.
That was one of my favorite Auburn games.
Yeah. The one at the SEC tournament when they played them. And then they kind of like, ooh, buddy. Because then, the Missouri sucked a lot. Because they were kind of a further back in the SEC tournament there. So
they were 11-7.
Yeah, because kind of going into kind of closing out the regular season. I mean, after that boat race Kentucky, I mean, they were really not on anybody's radar.
Yeah.
So point being there, you kind of look at that one and say, that wasn't great. You look at the next year, and this was the team that went down to the wire with San Diego State being the only undefeated team going up until January, lose a brutal one to Alabama and Tuscaloosa. They still talk about that one. I think there's still a banner. They probably still sell T-shirts of that. A huge, huge moment for that Alabama program. There, lose one to Florida, and then this was the year. This was a really weird year because it's like they went into overtime just nonstop. Like they played from February 4th, 8th, and 12th. They played 3 overtime games in a row, and then 2 times before that. So it was like, what is going on?
And this is the Okoro team, he said.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember he had a game winner against like an awful team in one of the first few games of the season. You were talking about a quad 4 loss. Whoever it was, we won a game.
Was it Furman? Because they went to overtime with Furman.
It was Furman. It was one of those first 5-6 games, and Okoro hit just like a layup, kind of like weird play to win the game, or else Auburn would have lost an ugly, ugly quad 7 game. I mean, yeah.
So part of it being here, if you kind of look at that, you look at some of the advanced stats. I'm trying to get through this because we're going to wrap this episode up here. And obviously we didn't have the postseason to really see what this team could have did. But I mean, even the last part of that season, they started to kind of slim down some. So you look at the record there, but kind of similar to this year, they didn't play a lot of heat in the preseason there. Not the preseason, the non-con. Wasn't any big Dukes or a Baylor or anything like that. I mean, you had a decent St. Louis team as a tournament team, but you weren't playing any big P5 powerhouse, decent SEC schedule, lose your postseason. And then you go to the Jabari. And the reason I'm bringing this up a little bit more details because I think we kind of romanticize some of these years without really going back and looking at it. Yeah. They played a tough game against a good UConn team, and UConn's been trending up since then. So you're not going to take that. They went all the way up and lose that brutal game to Arkansas where Zepp gets hurt. And then the game at Tennessee, and then, of course, A&M in the SEC tournament, and then just kind of crumbles from there, and they just did not show up in the postseason. So then I think that really kind of lets us look at it here. Do you think overall that this team – so, I mean, that would leave that. Because I think if you're looking at the Final Four team, and not in March, because I think in March they could have beaten anybody, especially Chuma stays healthy. But if you just play the totality of the season, I think this team, by and large, would be better than that team if you're looking at their entire year product.
Like if you played them, I think you've talked me into it. Coming into this, coming into this, I wasn't a believer in it. But then running through these numbers, I'm buying into it a little bit. I mean, this is my concern. It's, now it's going to be guard play, and I know that's cliche, but now I think sometimes people forget that your 2 is still guard play. Point guard play and in your 2 guard play is still guard play. Denver Jones going 7 of 9 from 3 is going to win you tournament games.
Yep.
So him heating up, I just think Holloway getting hot potentially would be awesome. And that's what made that Auburn team go to the Final Four. People get hot. Holloway gets hot, this team can go to the Final Four. Trey Donaldson hitting him like he did in the postseason last year. This team can go to the Final Four.
And this team hasn't gotten hot. And that's my thing about it. Like, hot take. I think if this team were to get hot versus a Final Four team that already was hot, like, you know what I'm saying?
They're better defensively.
Yeah, because we don't know what this team really even looks like hot. I mean, if Aiden's dropping threes and Denver's dropping his threes, CBM can hit them, Broom can hit them, and Jalen can hit them. I mean, they got it all. I mean, they got it in front court and back court and everything in between. So you kind of look there and say, all right, well, if they're shooting it and really just the last, and we know Trey can hit them.
Yeah.
So we know kind of the last piece of the puzzle for the team is just dumping the threes. Now, I still think the one thing they do struggle with is driving to the rim. So that can get annoying, but I think you make up with that with how good Broom is down low and shoot Jalen as well. So you're not seeing that a lot out of the guards, but your bigs you're doing it, and your bigs are doing it a lot better than Walker did it. Yeah. So just saying there's some things to be said there. And I know we could talk about this for a long, long time, but I mean, I really do think, and we'll see how the postseason goes. So I'm just trying to look at it from the regular season aspect, because that's kind of what we have to compare right now. And I think it's going to be, we're going to look back at this team and be like, oh, wow, it was better than I think we realize. And I think we're just getting a little bit tainted by the fact that, you kind of have that App State game, and there you have some of these eggs, and just, not quite in the contention for the SEC, barely there. But I mean, Auburn was really in the mix till the very end of a potential tie and I think the other thing you had to consider too is the entirety of the SEC. As you said, we can't get in all that. Now this team does not have the star power, so you don't have the draft picks of like a Walker and a Jabari in there to really, get it from the top. But I mean, I think if you kind of look at from the top to the bottom, and I kind of said this earlier point, I mean, I think it's hard to argue that this team from a depth standpoint isn't there. Now, what matters is what they do with the postseason. How do they finish it? And I mean, that, history, the trophies, the banners, I think are the true teller. So advanced stats, I mean, Auburn is 4th on Ken Palm, top 10 adjusted offense, defense. You're seeing all these metrics come out of where this team is projected to go. Obviously, Auburn has the stat correlations of teams in the past that have had similar stats and made good runs. And obviously, a lot of this can depend on the draws they get. Do they start heating up? Do they start trending up, down? Ken Palm's got them high. New side of Evan Maya or Moya, I'm not exactly sure you say his name. New kind of stat guy, kind of a new age Ken Palm. All his advanced stats have Auburn at number 6. So point being, there's a lot of favor here. I think just the one thing that they're not seeing, which hopefully could come in the tournament, is just the team is playing well, but I don't know, since they did end the season with lesser opponents comparatively to the middle of it, I don't know if you could necessarily say they're heating up because they're just beating bad teams like they have. Yeah. We got to see them do it against some good teams. And this is a time of year where it's all against good teams. And so consistency, I think, is the one thing. High level consistency is the one thing that we hadn't seen out of this team, which probably has a little people hesitant to get on the edge here. So we'll do another episode on this, of course, but I just want to kind of get a teaser on this just before we close this out. Andrew, how are you feeling about the postseason outlook for this team, all things considered here?
I don't really, we'll probably end up doing another show. I don't know if I love the draw for the SEC tournament.
Oh, okay. I'm the opposite. I actually liked it.
Another
episode. Episode.
And I'll be quick on my thoughts. It's like, I always hate, you just utterly steamrolled South Carolina. Mm-hmm. And that always just freaks me out a little bit. Auburn's a better team, but you just know what I mean? It's just, there's the history. Auburn recently kind of the one and dones, and they did it last year. They did it the Jabari year. So that thought's in my head. And then if they win, they play Tennessee. I mean, I'd rather play Tennessee than Kentucky, but I'd
I
rather
thought
play Alabama than both of those teams if I had
so.
the choice.
I thought that too. I was honestly like, I would rather play Tennessee than Kentucky, just because if Connect is not hot and it's just basically it's kind of a one-trick pony for them, I think Auburn can handle that one well. Where you'd have thought, but I mean, here's the deal: Kentucky as a team is heating up. Dalton Connect as a player is heating up.
Yeah.
I'd rather take my chances against one player than the entirety of a team. And I would much rather play South Carolina than than Florida. Florida's heating up too. I don't
Yeah.
want I don't want anything to do with that Florida team. I'd love a revenge game against them, but I like Auburn's chances against South Carolina than I do Florida.
I don't
So you're
disagree
right.
with you.
I mean,
I've been looking a lot at, I obviously Kentucky's the 2 seed, so it makes sense why their bracket is easier. But I loved there a couple of things. I think if Bama loses to Arkansas, Auburn would have been the 2 seed. No, because Kentucky ended up beating Tennessee. But point being, I kind of wish Auburn would have ended up getting that 2 seed because I like that, Bama is the 3 seed. I don't think Bama's playing well. You'd play Texas A&M in the first round probably. I don't hate the draw. I mean, when your first game is, on the Friday, you're going to be playing a good basketball team. It's not, you're not going to be playing Arkansas or Vandy. So I
right.
get it,
Yeah.
but I
It's all
just don't
about
know
that. It's all about that double bye.
exactly. That South Carolina game freaks me out a little bit. Sounds like more so than you, but that's just me.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say I'm discrediting South Carolina whatsoever. I'm just saying I would, if it were between South Carolina and Florida, which is what the draw was going to be very likely, assuming that there's no crazy upsets. So if things go chalk, we'll put a caveat there that I would feel better against that South Carolina team than I do Florida. I think that South Carolina team struck fire early. I think they are kind of fizzling out comparatively speaking. And I think Florida is trending up now. Now you can debate on paper which team is better, but South Carolina just has. I mean, it's funny because South Carolina did beat that Florida team, but South Carolina after Auburn lost to LSU, then they lost to Tennessee. They played some other teams that didn't have any business playing kind of close. I think they were really just riding that big Kentucky upset fairly high, where Florida, they just manhandled Alabama when they came to Gainesville, and they really should have beaten them in Tuscaloosa too, with how close that game was.
And I'll tell you this. I'll give you one here, my bold take before we call it a day.
Let's do it.
I could see Arkansas beating South Carolina. Arkansas is shooting the ball really well. They almost beat Kentucky in Rupp. They almost beat Alabama and Tuscaloosa. There were a couple things going another way from winning both of those games back-to-back Saturdays. I know that they had an ugly loss, I think, mixed in there somewhere. But
how did I okay, what rock am I living under, the fact that I missed that Vanderbilt beat Florida?
Yeah, Vandy beat Florida. Yeah, that was a fluke though. I mean, I'm
yeah,
with
it was
you
at Vanderbilt. But I was like, what in the world? That one was bananas.
I just have a weird feeling that Arkansas could beat that Auburn could play Arkansas instead of South Carolina. They're playing well. They're losing games, but they're playing well in losses against good basketball teams.
Yeah, well, Arkansas, I mean, here's the thing about it. We know, as much as I hate to say it, and I want to give Muss any credit, but we know who Muss is. I mean, he's postseason king.
Yeah.
He shows up randomly when it counts. He goes on runs when it counts. And I mean, yeah, this Arkansas team has been just tripping over themselves. They're still, I mean, they put up over 100 on Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
So they they really should have, if Muss didn't have just some of the dumbest coaching decisions, they should have beaten Alabama and Tuscaloosa. So
they also got screwed on a call. That there was a foul on a dunk. Did you see that? It should have been called a foul. I think almost ices the game. So it should have been 2 free throws. Now that guy that got fouled isn't the best free throw shooter, but I think if he makes one of them, their chances of winning that game are about 90%.
Yeah, and I mean, because it does beg the question. I'm not saying I have an answer here. So, guys, leave it in the comments. Would you rather play a potentially heating up Arkansas team or this South Carolina team versus Auburn in the quarterfinals? That does beg the question. I think it's pretty safe to say they'll be facing up against Tennessee if Auburn does win their first game, and then probably, I think it's safe to say that Kentucky's going to take care of business against Alabama on a neutral court if their previous game shows anything to do with the matchups. Because I think if you get beat how they did, you have a matchup problem. And this Alabama team is, like I said, they're trending downward, and their defense is going from bad to worse. And also, too, Alabama's bigs, especially Grant Nelson, cannot stay out of foul trouble.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's been fouling out or almost fouling out almost every single game. So it makes matchup problems go from bad to worse when Nate Oates is having to adjust his rotation because his guys just can't stop fouling at very bad times. So love that for them. Happy for it. That's going to wrap us up for this episode. There's the debate. Do we think that this team could be one of the best Auburn basketball teams ever? The debate will continue, and we'll see how they close it out for the end of the year. Because, hey, you know what? They make a run in March, it might solidify. So the debate is out there. I think there's enough to say that this team is most definitely on the Mount Rushmore of Auburn teams for sure. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it shows us why. Andrew, before we close out, where can everybody find where you're at and what you're doing?
Yeah, everything I'm writing over at auburndaily.com. Follow me on Twitter at Andrews Funny. I'll be in Nashville for the tournament. Sounds like you will as well, Alex.
I'll be there.
Gonna be a good time. Come holler if you see us in Nashville. Be a good time. Yep.
Good time. Well, we're going to get this episode out right now. So we are recording it Monday. We are posting it Monday. Daylight savings time. There was no chance we were recording Sunday. We were both we didn't know what planet we're on because once again, we didn't have our planes coffee. So guys, that's going to wrap us up today. We'll be back for another SEC tournament preview. We'll be back for a March Madness preview. A lot of basketball content. We got the foot on the gas pedal. We're ready to roll. Thanks, George, as always, Andrew, and guys, thanks for tuning in the show. Like, support, notifications, podcast, YouTube, all the places, comments, reviews, all the things that help the show grow so much. Thank you guys for being a part of it. Have a good rest of your day.